Brexit in name only. Our politicians have failed us. I can only speak for myself when I say this, but I thought that if we could be in control of our own destiny, we could do a better job than unelected, unremovable, unaccountable, faceless bureaucrats having monthly jollies in Brussels at our expense. What started out as a small collaboration of nations working together towards a united trade-based goal became a costly political behemoth and intruder, an enforcer that no longer represented the views of the individual states within it because vested interests took over and, frankly, it was too big. Now, you'd think that the governing parties would see that a British people overwhelmingly voting to leave the EU, a failed project, and get behind it. Instead, we had this to contend with.
To stand here as your candidate for Prime Minister, because a Liberal Democrat government will stop Brexit and build a brighter future.
A serious discussion and a serious debate to prevent a no-deal Brexit. What we're going to do is try to politically stop him on Tuesday with a parliamentary process in order to legislate to prevent a no-deal Brexit.
The entire strategy is basically to sabotage Brexit. That's it, isn't it?
Yes.
This went on for years and made the UK a laughingstock. It was ridiculous and showed just how inept and lazy our politicians had become, allowing others to govern instead of them. Yesterday, I visited North Shields, which was a Brexit split of 52, roughly 48, so practically mirroring the vote, and this is what I found.
It's been bad, the exact opposite. It hasn't worked out as the government promised anyhow. Locally here in North Shields, which is all I can speak about, it's been a bit of a disaster.
I would say that really nothing's changed in terms of the act of going to sea. So for the fishermen themselves, there hasn't been any changes, certainly no positive ones anyway. They're effectively still operating under the same rules as the EU's common fisheries policy. Nothing's changed at all, really.
So basically, no one was happy with it. But whether people voted to leave or remain, the overriding response was one of dissatisfaction with the political classes and how they'd royally screwed it up. And online, the backlash of people saying, "I told you so," people like a troll on X complaining that he can't visit his newly renovated house in Italy for longer than 3 months now, or this guy who said that he can't go to his big house in Benidorm.
Even from Kent, what's your view on leaving the EU? Has it benefited you?
No, definitely worse off, definitely.
Okay. In what way?
Well, I'm a house owner, a big house just outside Benidorm.
Oh.
Can only use it three months at a time, 3 months away from there, and it's cost me a fortune. Still have to pay the SUMA, which is similar to council tax for the full year. Same with the tax and insurance on cars. Same as the electric and water meter. You still got to pay for that. You don't get nothing.
Oh, my heart bleeds. So a bunch of rich people who have second properties elsewhere complaining that they're going to have to spend less time and more money. I have no sympathy whatsoever. I voted to leave so wages would rise for those of us who are poorer and so that we could govern ourselves. But sadly, I didn't realise just how bad our politicians would be at it, not taking advantage of the flexibility that Brexit offered and signing very bad deals. Now, Donald Trump is apparently planning to stick big tariffs on the EU, but we are no longer in it, which is great. If Keir and his clan can avoid messing up our relationship with the US, then we might be able to use Brexit as the opportunity it was meant to be. This was a start.
I consider my remarks about President Trump as ill-judged and wrong. I think that he has won fresh respect. He certainly has from me, and that is going to be the basis of all the work I do as His Majesty's ambassador in the United States.
Yeah, what was it he called Trump? A danger to the world and nothing short of a racist. Our politicians need to start working in the country's best interests rather than their own and stop scuppering opportunities that go against what they as individuals believe and start to represent the majority of the British people. They need to grow up, show some conviction and stop calling people names. Maybe then we might be able to get somewhere. joining me now, former Labour MP Stephen Pound. Stephen Pound, I think that my assessment was pretty fair on Brexit. What's your take?
Well, please don't misunderstand me when I say I actually disagree with almost everything you said.
No surprises there.
And here I am as the owner of a small house in West London. Never, ever had a second home in Benidorm. You know. But look, I think one thing you did say that resonated with me was when you talked about the founding of the EU, when it was back in the economic area. And in many ways, that's what we're trying to do in the Labour Party, is that we know we are not going to go back into Europe. There's a democratic decision. It's a knife-edge, cigarette paper thin majority, but it was a democratic vote. So that's it. Job done. However, why shouldn't we be trading with what was our biggest trading partner? So I think when you talked about the early days of the EU, let's try to get that back again, have it as a trading partnership.
Well, that's if they'll enable it and allow it. But as you know, you saw how immature they were, how they behaved alongside our own politicians in ensuring that a democratic vote did not materialise and was not respected in the way that it should have been. And really, if they had been mature, both parties been mature, they could have come to a decent agreement, which is what we expect of our politicians.
No, what is the one thing that you would introduce today that would actually make our relationship better, make Britain stronger, and make Brexit not just Brexit in name only? What would you do?
Well, what would you do? You answer your own.
No, I don't want to. As far as I'm concerned, we've got a democratic deal. We've got the best thing we can. There's some fundamental contradictions. When you look at the Brexit deal, we all knew this is the end of the United Kingdom. No question about that. There's no way that the north of Ireland can remain within the United Kingdom under this Brexit breakaway. It simply can't happen. So that's a huge fundamental democratic shift in this country.
But again, it was a very bad deal. It was constructed badly, and it had the EU...
But how could it not have been?
No, had the EU grown up, being a bit more mature about it and a little bit more flexible, then we would not be having to break up the United Kingdom. But let's not forget how inflexible they were. Let's not forget how bitter they were. It was like a spawned lover who had been ditched and they couldn't handle it. Let's be honest about this. If you can at least be honest, their behaviour was somewhat...
Well, I'm sorry, Nana, you're trying to imply that the EU actually had a personality. There was a single person. The EU is made up of individual states, of individual countries and individual voters, including our people. And I have to say the EU has done an incredible number of compromises on trade with Northern Ireland. Goods can flow backwards and forwards across the moment.
Northern Ireland, but let's not forget that they were laughing at Theresa May every time she tried to make some deals.
But who's they? Sorry, who's they?
There was a generous consensus in the EU that Theresa May was useless. I think it was Michel Barnier who made some comments about her, or somebody within the EU. I'll have to research that and find out. But they weren't particularly friendly about her.
Well, neither was the Tory party.
Yeah, but the bottom line, that's true. But the bottom line is this immaturity. They did not accept. OK, it's a democratic vote. Now let's find. We could have even potentially had some sort of a free trade deal with them. We just didn't want this integration, which appeared to be happening constantly, stepping into the UK and coming up with ideas that really didn't work for this country. Why shouldn't we be able to run our own country? Why?
Well, we could before. You know.
In what way?
We made our own rules, our own laws. We could resile from the EU rules that we didn't like. You know, let's take a couple of things absolutely straight. Firstly, the EU is in a state of crisis. I'll give you that.
Absolutely.
If you look at what's happening in Hungary, what I'm saying is the EU is changing. It's changing organically in front of our very eyes. If you look at what is the most successful economy in Europe by a mile at the moment, what is the only country that has 4% GDP per annum growth? Spain. And Spain is actually roaring ahead at the present time within the EU. Other countries aren't doing so well.
Like France and Germany. We are ahead of France and Germany in the EU.
We're not. It depends.
We are.
But the interesting point is, what will the new EU be like? And it could be radically different.
Well, it's moving towards the right.
But we won't be there, will we?
But listen, let's be honest, the EU is moving towards the right.
Well, not in Spain, it's not. They're incredibly successful.
Let's look at larger parts.
Not in Malta, it's not. Not in Greece, it's not.
Two places, but let's go France, let's go Germany, let's go Italy. Let's talk about the bigger countries within the EU, the real movers and shakers. They are all moving towards the right. So what is it that these people want us to go back? It's mostly left-wing people that want us to join a bloc that is moving towards the right. So it doesn't even make any sense.
Nobody in their right mind, nobody with half an ounce of common sense would want to go back to the old EU. The old EU doesn't exist anymore. It's changing. Europe is changing in front of our eyes. And it just worries me that we're outside it. We are not part of it.
I think it's very sad that you feel that this country can only be a success if it clings to an ailing block of countries.
No, it's not a
that are in decline. They are.
No, we can be perfectly successful in or out, but it's simply a matter of trade. It's a matter of trade.
Yes, but if it's a matter of trade, it means we can do better deals with other people without the shackles of the EU.
We're doing trade with Ecuador. That was a big deal.
So what? Listen, what's wrong with... Is it the way I see this? Is this want to affiliate yourself with this. We're like what are those things on the bottom of the ocean that stick to things?
Limpets.
No, I don't know whether they're limpets, but they're sticking to this rock that is falling, it's sinking, and you want to be attached to it. The reality is, this country, before all the EU was able to go around all the world and colonise and do all this, we were a strong nation, and we need to give back to that instead of thinking that we can only be that way if we affiliate ourselves. It makes us look very weak.
Am I going to fall into the impossible situation of actually talking to you about African liberation politics? I mean, there's no way that we could... No, I wouldn't be so insulting or so, so patronising.
Well,
look,
I wouldn't if I were you.
Yeah, well, I'm terrified of you, I know that. Look, the reality is there's no way that Ghana or the Gold Coast would have carried on happily inside the colonies, inside the Commonwealth, as a trading partner, subservient to the Britain. The wind of change was blowing through Africa.
Yes,
we know
that's
that.
not the point I'm making.
No.
That's not the point I'm making. The point I'm making is that we were not affiliated with the EU in the way that we were before.
No, but it was...
Sorry,
it couldn't be sustained.
Sorry. When we colonised the world is what I'm saying. And my point I'm making is that as a single nation, we are strong, and we need to start believing it instead of thinking, the narrative that's coming from you is if we have to be part of the EU, otherwise, look at us, this is our closest trading partner. In my view, actually, the Schengen within the EU and all those things, I think that they help to create racism because everyone gets annoyed with people coming across and things. I actually think that it's slightly a racist situation there because you're prioritising people who are mainly white over the rest of the world. Why not make it a level playing field for everybody? That makes sense to me.
Well, the idea of free movement within the EU actually started off as a very sensible idea. So people like you...
Silly.
What it meant was that you could work in Italy or, or your equivalent, could actually come and work here.
I can still work in Italy.
It's a very good idea.
I can still work in Italy.
Yeah, but you now have to have a work permit. You didn't before.
Like everybody in the world.
So more bureaucracy.
So what?
Well,
so what?
I thought you were against bureaucracy.
No, well, we can change bits of bureaucracy. It's up to that's my point. It's up to the nations as to how they do this. If they do it so that we can all benefit. Instead, they want to put a block in there and say you've left, so you should be punished.
But you make a powerful point about Schengen. But I mean, Schengen wouldn't have stopped people coming from the Maghreb, wouldn't have come from North Africa, wouldn't have stopped people coming from Turkey. Those places are all outside Schengen.
No, well, that was our useless politicians once again with their useless legal migration who didn't deal with the situation properly. That was nobody's saying they did a good job in terms of legal migration. That's ridiculous. It's off the scale. But the point is that Schengen meant that whilst we all thought it's a great thing, the bottom line is it just meant that there was unvetted immigration across the two lines, which in the end was our own the destruction, I think, of the whole.
Well, what it meant was once you got actually inside the EU, you could wander wherever the hell.
Anywhere you like.
As somebody who spent 22 years in Parliament, I'm not going to try to make the case for politicians being super intellectual and great experts and things. But the reality is that we are in a bad situation at the moment. Nobody can tell me what we could do to make it better, except maybe have better trading relations and just move on from this.
I think we need to move on from it, really. We need to start trading properly with the rest of the world, and we need these blockers who get in the way and say, oh, you should go back in the EU, to just move aside and let the government get on with it. And if only the government would focus on it, we could potentially have some brilliant trade deals, but hey, there needs to be a will.